They laughed when I said I wanted to start my own business. You can't even cook pasta right, my sister said. I didn't argue. But when they saw my billboard in Times Square. You ever have a moment that brands itself into your memory so deep it still stings a decade later? Mine was at the family dinner table, 3 years ago, Thanksgiving. I remember the clinking of forks, the dull hum of awkward conversation, and the scent of garlic rolls that had just started to burn in the oven. Everyone was there: Mom, Dad, my cousins, my sister Natalie, sitting across from me in her usual throne-like posture, wine glass in hand, eyes scanning the room like she owned it. She always had a knack for sensing weakness. And me? I was the softest target. Always had been. The backup plan, at least I'm not him, of the family. It was when someone, maybe my uncle, asked me what I'd been up to. I said something casual, something half-truthful, like, thinking about maybe starting something, a food business. That's when Natalie burst out laughing, right in the middle of cutting into her second helping of turkey. A food business? She repeated, turning toward Mom like she needed confirmation that she heard me right. You can't even cook pasta right! It hit like a punch. Everyone laughed. Even my dad chuckled into his glass of scotch. I didn't say a word. Didn't defend myself. I just smiled, like I didn't care. But deep down, something shifted. Something solidified. They didn't know it, but that night, the planning began. That night after dinner, I went home, microwaved leftover spaghetti, and just stared at the wall while chewing. It was overcooked. Mushy. Tasteless. I threw the bowl away halfway through. Natalie's voice rang in my ears on loop. You can't even cook pasta right! She was right then. But I didn't sleep that night. Not out of shame. Out of obsession. I opened my laptop and started Googling pasta ratios, flour types, egg-to-flour weight conversions. I watched grainy YouTube videos at 2 a.m. of old Italian men rolling pasta sheets with their bare hands and homemade dowels. I read food chemistry forums like they were sacred texts. I printed out recipes, diagrams, journaled what worked and what didn't. I became a ghost at work. My manager, a guy named Carl who never remembered my name, called me into his office one morning and said I looked off. That's because I had been awake until 4 a.m. trying to figure out why my tagliatelle dough kept tearing in the roller. That night I told Carl I was quitting. I had $4,300 in savings and no real plan. But I bought a used pasta extruder off Craigslist from a retired caterer in Queens, and a vacuum sealer from a pawn shop in Jersey. The first month, I made nothing but fettuccine. Every single day. Until my arms ached. Until the air in my apartment smelled like semolina and eggs. And every batch went straight in the trash. I burned through my savings faster than I thought I would. Rent was due. My internet got cut off for a week. I pawned my PlayStation. Sold my old bike. I applied for temp jobs, delivery gigs, and tutoring on weekends just to buy flour. My diet consisted of pasta scraps and gas station coffee. But one night, something changed. I made a batch of spinach ravioli with lemon ricotta filling that didn't tear, didn't explode in the pot, didn't leak. I boiled it, plated it, and took a bite, and I actually froze. It was good. Like restaurant good. I cried. Actually sat on my kitchen floor, half laughing, half sobbing like a lunatic. I started giving samples to my neighbor, Mrs. Clark, a retired nurse who lived alone and always smelled like eucalyptus. She said, "Sweetheart, this is better than Olive Garden." And I don't mean that as an insult. I took that as the first compliment I'd ever gotten from someone who didn't have to give one. So I made more. Packaged it. Sold 10 boxes on Facebook Marketplace under the name Al Dente Dreams. Then 20. Then 75. That's when the rejection emails started. I had the guts to pitch it to local boutique grocers, food bloggers, investors. All I got were polite pass-offs. Not scalable. Needs branding. Not what we're looking for at the moment. Some didn't even bother to respond. One person said, "Pasta meal kits are too crowded a space." Another said, "Too niche." Another, You have no culinary background. No chance. They weren't wrong. I didn't have a Michelin star. I didn't go to culinary school. All I had was flour under my fingernails, aching hands, and a very long memory of my sister's smirk. But I wasn't stopping. If anything, their silence became fuel. I built a small Shopify site by watching free coding tutorials. I learned logo design on Canva. I bartered with a photographer from Craigslist to take good food shots in exchange for free product. I mailed a handwritten letter and a frozen sample to the assistant of Chef Daniel Rhodes, a celebrity chef known for flipping cheap food into fine dining masterpieces. Never expected a reply. Until I got one. I remember the moment like it was a movie scene. I was walking home in the rain, one of those miserable February evenings when the sky feels like wet concrete. I had just finished a 12-hour warehouse shift. My flower fund, as I called it. My phone buzzed. Subject: Let's talk pasta. From assistant to Chef Daniel Rhodes. At first, I thought it was spam. Or a prank. I tapped it open anyway. Inside was a short message. Chef Rhodes received your box. He says it was the best ravioli he's had this year. He'd like to meet. I stopped walking right there in the middle of the sidewalk. A guy bumped into me and muttered something, but I didn't hear him. I just stood in the rain, reading that email over and over until my screen was soaked. 3 days later, I was sitting in a minimalist downtown restaurant, fidgeting in a Goodwill blazer that still had someone else's name stitched in the collar. Daniel Rhodes walked in 10 minutes late, wearing all black, sunglasses indoors, and the confidence of a man who knew he didn't have to explain himself to anyone. He didn't smile. He just said, "That ricotta you used, was it lemon zest by hand?" I nodded. He leaned back in the chair and said, "Good. You've got taste. Now let's fix your brand." We worked quietly for months. He didn't put his name on anything. He said he didn't want it to seem forced. But he funded the first real production run of Al Dente Dreams. Helped me find a kitchen space in Brooklyn. Introduced me to a brand designer who knew how to make pasta look sexy. And then, one tweet changed everything. Daniel posted a short clip, him twirling a forkful of my cacio e pepe over a steaming bowl, saying, "This is what I eat when I'm home." No cap. The video had no logo. No tag. Just 15 seconds of slow-motion food and a chef's nod of approval. People found me anyway. Within 24 hours, my site crashed. Orders flooded in. A food blogger with 500,000 followers reviewed it and called it heaven in a box. Celebrities started tweeting about Al Dente Dreams. 1 week later, I was on the phone with a buyer from Whole Foods. That was the week my phone rang again, but this time it was Natalie. She didn't say, "Hi." Didn't say, "Congratulations." Just this. "Wait. Is that your company?" I let the silence stretch. "Because people are saying, like it's everywhere." I smiled. "Guess I figured out how to cook pasta." She didn't laugh this time. In fact, she didn't say anything for a while. Then she said, "Mom and Dad are proud, you know." I could hear the reluctance in her voice like it was scraping her throat. "Are they?" I said. "Funny. I haven't heard from them." Then I hung up. Politely. But I wasn't done. Because I had something planned. Something big. The idea came to me in the middle of the night. How poetic it would be to pull off my biggest reveal exactly the way they least expected it, with a smile and an invitation. I called it the reunion. But really, it was my reckoning. I texted the family group chat. Yeah, the same one where they used to send photos of Natalie's promotions and Adam's kids and somehow forgot I existed. "Hey, I'm in the city for a few days. Would love to catch up. Lunch on me this Saturday?" Natalie replied first. "Wow, didn't know you were still alive." "Sounds good." Mom followed with, "We're free." "Where?" Dad gave me the classic thumbs up emoji. No words. I gave them a time, 1 p.m. sharp. Told them to meet me at 45th and 7th Avenue. "Trust me," I wrote. "You'll know it when you see it." They probably thought I was going to suggest Applebee's. Or some tiny overpriced bistro tucked away on a side street. But what I had in store? It was bigger than lunch. It was the moment I'd been working towards since that dinner when they laughed in my face. I didn't tell anyone, not even Daniel. I wanted the moment to be mine. You see, when Al Dente Dreams hit its 1 millionth order, we signed a campaign deal with a digital billboard company. It was simple, a 5-second loop featuring our best-selling truffle mushroom ravioli, spinning in high def on a fork above a plate. But for one day only, I had them swap it out for something a little personal. Saturday arrived. I showed up early. Hoodie, sunglasses, coffee in hand, blending in with the crowd, just another face among thousands. At 12:59 p.m., I spotted them. Natalie in a beige trench coat, holding her designer purse like a trophy. Mom fussing with her hair, Dad tapping his phone, probably checking sports scores. They looked lost. Confused. Just like I wanted them to. Then the screen lit up. A slow zoom in on a gold fork lifting ribbons of homemade pasta. A flash of basil. Melted parmesan. Steam curling into a black background. Then, Al Dente Dreams. Founder James E. Palmer. From family punchline to pasta icon. Meal kits nationwide, featured by Chef Daniel Rhodes. And then, because I couldn't help myself, a quote. "You can't even cook pasta right." Natalie Palmer, Thanksgiving 2022. Their heads snapped upward. I watched their eyes grow wide in unison. Natalie's mouth dropped open like she'd just bitten into a lemon. Mom pressed her fingers to her lips. Dad finally looked up from his phone. I walked toward them slowly, savoring every second. My shoes clicked over the pavement like a metronome, each step syncing perfectly with the silence that had fallen over our little group. When I got close enough to see Natalie's eyes welling up, not with pride, but confusion, maybe even fear, I stopped. Looked her dead in the eye. And said, calm as anything, "Guess I figured out how to cook pasta." For a second, nobody moved. Not Natalie, who looked like her brain had disconnected from her mouth. Not Mom, who kept blinking up at the billboard as if she could will it away. Not even Dad, who finally pocketed his phone and stared at me like he'd only just realized I existed. Then Natalie took a breath, maybe to fire back, maybe to laugh it off, maybe to demand how I pulled it off, but nothing came out. Nothing. That silence? It was better than applause. They didn't know I had booked the billboard for exactly 3 minutes on a loop. They didn't know I'd watched the footage a dozen times the night before, tweaking every word. They didn't know that I'd spent the last 2 years perfecting that moment, not just the business. "Why didn't you tell us?" Mom finally asked, her voice tight, like it had been locked in a box for too long. I shrugged. "Figured you weren't interested." "That's not fair," she said. But she didn't sound convinced. Dad just kept staring at the screen as the loop started again, the steam, the fork, the quote, her quote. Natalie shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting from the billboard to me. "That's taken out of context," she muttered. "No," I said. "That was the context. You remember Thanksgiving, don't you?" She looked away. "It was a joke," she mumbled. I leaned in slightly. "So was I. For years." The words didn't come from a place of bitterness. They were just facts. Cold, clean facts delivered with a smile. I had no anger left. No grudge to hold. Just pasta. And peace. We stood there for another full minute, watching the billboard together like some twisted family movie night. People around us had no idea what they were witnessing. Just another Times Square crowd. Another billboard. But for me, it was the moment everything flipped. Natalie eventually pulled her coat tighter and turned to leave. "Well," she said, stiff, trying to salvage dignity that wasn't there. "Congratulations." She didn't wait for a response. Mom gave me a longer look. Not exactly proud, not exactly ashamed. Something in between. She gave a small nod, then followed Natalie. Dad lingered. His eyes stayed fixed on the looping pasta until the final frame flashed, my name in bold. Then he gave a quiet, almost imperceptible nod. It was the closest thing to a "well done" I was ever going to get from him. And it was enough. I didn't follow them. Didn't call out. I turned the other way and walked into the crowd, my brand above me, my old life behind me. You'd think the Times Square moment would have been the end. The final chapter. Me, victorious, pasta in one hand and poetic justice in the other. But life doesn't work like that. There's always another pot to stir. That night, I took the train back to my apartment in Brooklyn. Still the same creaky floorboards, same drafty windows. No penthouse, no marble countertops. I sat on my couch with a bowl of my own spinach ricotta tortellini, same recipe that changed everything, and watched late-night reruns, quietly chewing through everything I'd just done. The revenge? It tasted good. Better than I'd imagined. But what stayed with me longer than Natalie's stunned face or Dad's nod was the fire. The one that got me here in the first place. And the realization that it hadn't burned out. Not even close. Because underneath the success, the press features, the chef endorsements, the viral clips, I still remembered the early mornings in my shoebox kitchen, kneading dough by hand until my knuckles cracked. I remembered emailing 50 bloggers in one night and getting one reply that said, "Please remove me from your list." I remembered eating plain boiled pasta for dinner 3 weeks in a row and pretending it was menu testing. Those memories didn't leave. They just settled beneath everything, like a solid base. Like the weight of real Parmesan compared to the fake powdered stuff. The day after the Times Square reveal, orders doubled. Then tripled. Then Whole Foods placed a second, much larger order. And out of nowhere, a mid-tier investor I hadn't heard from in months emailed to say he always knew I had potential. I smiled at the screen and deleted the message. I wasn't hungry for approval anymore. Just pasta. The press started calling me the underdog chef. Which was funny considering I still wasn't a chef. I was just a guy who used to ruin boxed macaroni, who once cried over ravioli in a kitchen that was falling apart. Who got laughed at, not just by family but by every stranger with a spreadsheet and an MBA. And now? People were tagging me in videos of first dates over my meal kits. Birthdays. Proposals. College students in dorms making fettuccine on hot plates and calling it a luxury night. That was the fire. Not proving them wrong. But proving that I could build something people actually cared about. Something that started with nothing but shame, silence, and semolina. It was late spring, a few months after the Billboard. I was in the test kitchen, our new space, leased by a friend of Daniel's, tucked behind a bakery in the Lower East Side. We just finished filming a short recipe reel for the next launch, roasted red pepper pappardelle with a pecorino drizzle. I was washing dishes when my phone buzzed. It was a name I hadn't seen in a while. Natalie. Not a text this time. A call. I let it ring. Once. Twice. On the third ring, I answered. Not because I was curious, or hoping for something profound. But because I was ready. Her voice came out smaller than I remembered. Hey, James. A pause. I've been meaning to reach out. I stayed silent. I saw the article in Bon Appetit, she continued, and the interview on Channel 4. I didn't know you'd been doing all that. On your own, she said. On your own. Like it was a discovery. Like the last 15 years hadn't made that obvious. Must have taken a lot, she added. It wasn't an apology. But it wasn't mockery either. That, in itself, was progress. You always wanted to be taken seriously, she said. Guess I didn't realize how serious you were about it. I took a breath and let the water run over my hands. I didn't do it to prove you wrong, I said. Not entirely. A nervous laugh crackled through the line. But it helped, right? I smiled. Yeah. It helped. Then came the part one didn't expect. I was wrong. About you. About all of it, really. I thought you were just floating. Like you'd always been the kid who started things and never finished. And I guess I got used to looking down on you. It made me feel better about my own life. She let out a breath. But when I saw that billboard, I couldn't stop thinking about how hard you must have worked. How quiet you were about it. And how none of us ever asked. Silence. I'm not calling to fix things, she said. I know it's not that simple. But I wanted you to know I'm proud of you. I didn't say anything right away. Not out of spite. I just wanted to sit in the moment for a second. Pride. From Natalie. That was new. And honestly? Strange. Thanks, I said finally. That means something. She asked if I wanted to meet sometime. Just coffee. Nothing heavy. I told her I'd think about it. We hung up. And I stood there, hands dripping over a clean sink, wondering if some people change because they want to, or because they have no choice but to. Either way, I didn't feel like the joke anymore. Not to her. Not to myself. 2 weeks after Natalie's call, I got another one, this time from a number that made my stomach tighten the moment I saw it. Mom. We hadn't spoken since the Times Square reunion. I let it ring 4 times. Then I picked up. James, she said, soft like she was calling from the other side of a confession booth. I know I might be the last person you want to hear from. There was no argument from me. I just waited. I saw your face in the newspaper, she said. Dad brought it in from the driveway, folded open to the article. He didn't say anything. Just left it on the counter like he wanted me to read it without him having to bring it up. She took a breath. I read the whole thing. Twice. Still, I didn't speak. I'd learned by now that silence could do more than shouting ever could. I realized, she continued, I never really asked what you were working on. What you cared about. I thought you were drifting. I assumed you'd eventually settle for something small. Something safe. Another breath. This one trembled. I didn't know you were building something with purpose. That you were sacrificing. That you were up at night working until your hands ached. Her voice cracked. I could hear her trying to rein it in. I failed you, she said finally. We all did. And I'm sorry. Those words, I'm sorry, I never thought I'd hear them from her. Not in a full sentence. Not with weight behind them. Thank you, I said simply. She trailed off. I wanted to know if you'd come by sometime. Not for anything formal. Just dinner. At home. Dinner. The irony didn't miss me. The last time we were all at that table, Natalie was tearing me down over undercooked noodles. And now? Now they wanted me back. Not as a background character, not as a punchline, but as someone worth setting a place for. I'll think about it, I said. And I meant it. I really did. I wasn't interested in dragging the past to the table like a side dish. But maybe, just maybe, I could walk through that front door again and sit down without carrying all the weight I used to. The Billboard came down weeks ago. The orders slowed to something sustainable. The press moved on, as it always does. But I'm still here, kneading dough in the early mornings, scribbling flavor notes in the margins of notebooks, testing sauces like it's science. We're not trying to be a fad anymore. We're building a legacy. I hired 2 interns last month, both culinary school dropouts, hungry in that way I recognize instantly. One of them burned his first batch of noodles and looked at me like he expected to be fired. I laughed. Then I showed him how to fix it. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't always get to choose how people see you. But you do get to choose what you do about it. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just cooked. And in the end, they had no choice but to watch me rise, forkful by forkful.